Hello, my name is Mark Moore. I'm a hypnotherapist from Leicestershire. I also use a lot of NLP, that's neuro linguistic programming, in my work. I do some counselling. I practice and teach mindfulness meditation. And I also give talks to businesses, groups, charities, anyone who will listen to effect around mental health, how we can improve and maintain good mental health. One of the things we've been talking about on my social media pages, also it's coming up quite often, is fear and worry, and really just how to cope with it, how to move through it and deal with it. So today I just want to talk for a little while about acknowledging our fears, if you like, how to cope with them, and maybe just give you a few tips that will help you move through the current problems that we're having, and some tips that you can maybe just carry forward beyond, just to help you have a little bit more peace and calmness in your life. So as I say, today I just want to talk about fear, and I've had a lot of people asking for advice, if you like. And one of the big things I always say is trying to recognise what it is that scares us and why we have the reaction that we do. And there's a lot of fear around at the moment, obviously around coronavirus, COVID-19, and all the issues that creates for us. So that's fear about our job, our families, our overall health, even the wider future. What will it be like beyond coronavirus in terms of all those things again, our families and work, etc. And one thing that we all fear that really gives us a problem is uncertainty, the unknown. Because where we have gaps in our information, gaps in our knowledge, we try to fill those gaps. Our mind gets busy trawling through all our internal references, and I've been interesting to eavesdrop just lately on some of the conversations as I've been queuing outside supermarkets, people creating their own headlines, if you like, having their own horror stories but feeling absolutely sure of how this is all going to end up for us. And that's quite natural, I think. We're inquisitive by nature, so we want to feed and satisfy our curiosity, and uncertainty is unsettling. So we try to put a stake in the ground, we try to sort of denote, if you like, our chosen outcome or outcomes. And at least that way we can then put that particular worry down sometimes and maybe just move on to the next worry, the next problem. But I think it's worth remembering that fear is subjective. It covers a huge scale. So taking something basic, roller coasters come to mind. So even those people who love roller coasters, they love it because of the thrill. It invokes a certain fear in them. They get that little bit of stomach churning, a bit of shake, they get hot, but they love it. It's an adrenaline rush, if you like. Some people will ride on roller coasters reluctantly, and after the event they realize, yep, I enjoy it, but always that real fear before they get on. There are some people who would never ever go on a roller coaster. And I've even met someone who will not go in a theme park where there is a roller coaster. So it's all subjective. We can all have different degrees of fear, if you like. So take something like snakes. I see clients who cannot even look at the picture of a snake. Even the thought of a snake will throw them into a panic. I think it's just worth playing on this point for a moment, just staying there, because this issue of subjectivity. So when your partner, your child, your brother or sister, your colleague, someone you know has a bit of a fear, that fear is real. However amusing or irrational it might seem to us, it's a real fear. I just want to take a moment to get you to ask yourself if exposing someone to something that really scares them is good ethical entertainment value. Because all that happens when you throw the rubber snake into someone's lap or put the toy spider in the sun visor in the car is you're just reinforcing that fear. And remember, however obscure or deeply you might repress your own fears, we all have at least one fear. So be careful that somebody doesn't subject you to your fears as well. But it also damages people's self-esteem, their confidence, and many other facets of their lives. So please, as fun as it is, just think, particularly now, while people have got enough to worry about just using their fear as your entertainment. It's worth remembering as well that some of our fears are learned. This is to say that we see how other people react to something and we copy their behaviour. Spiders is probably a good example. Few of us have actually had physical contact. We've never had a incident, if you like, with a spider, any sort of fight or anything else. We're aware of their existence. That's normally it. But we're still afraid. We are terrified even in a lot of cases. And when we look at the obvious size difference, when we actually know that they're perfectly harmless, they still scare us. The language we use when we talk about them, someone comes in and said, there's a huge spider or a massive spider in the bathroom, and it's huge compared to what? So it's very important that we remember, if you like, that some of these fears, we may not even understand them. We've seen our parents, our siblings, other family members react in a certain way to something. That suggests that it's scary to us. We don't even understand why. But very often the fear that we have is simply a learned fear. I've spoken before a little bit about something called locus of control. How some of us have an internal locus of control and feel that we are, so to speak, masters of our own destiny, if you like. Our efforts, our labours, everything else is what gets us to where we are at any specific point in life. But there are some people who have an external locus of control, and that is people who feel that regardless of anything they do, they have no control over the ultimate outcome, and ultimately these people will just get or feel tossed and pushed and pulled through life, and wherever they end up, it matters not. They have no control over it. And for those people, they can, if you like, feel more fear because they feel that lack of control, that sense of things will happen to them over which ultimately they have no control. And also, just staying with fears, some fears are short-lived, others can last a long time. Take something as basic as going to the dentist. That fear may start a day or two before the appointment. It may start a couple of weeks. That wonderful thing now where you get the text from the dentist 2 weeks. And if you think about that, you hadn't thought about it since your last 6 months checkup. Now suddenly it's 2 weeks away. And so the fear starts, if you like. And often that fear actually amounts to nothing. We go for our appointments, we have our checkup, it says everything's fine, and you feel that huge wave of relief as you step out, and you feel how much you were probably sweating and didn't realise it. It's a little bit shaky, a little bit nauseous, but nothing happened. But that was just going for a checkup. That's probably not even talking about going for fillings or extractions. And basically, we were just afraid of what might be. We can remember maybe having a filling or an extraction at some point, the discomfort associated with that. So we access the memories of going to the dentist, we look at the possible outcomes, and we play up all of those potential outcomes. Interestingly, we don't think about the 8, 9, 10, multiple times we've been to the dentist for a checkup, everything's fine, and we've simply gone and waited for the next 6 months or 12 monthly checkup. So we do have a tendency to look at worst case scenario. And very often, I do think this could just simply be a matter of association. We associate the dentist with pain, discomfort, nervousness. What about if you looked at a dentist as someone associated with good oral health, who is actually helping you take care of your physical body, if you like, the aesthetics, keeping your smile nice, etc. And just try and put in a positive spin on that, rather than someone who's there to inflict pain. Because I've worked with some dentists, I've worked with a therapist who trains dentists in hypnotherapy and also helps their clients as well. And very often it's just a case of association. We think worse all the time. And in most occasions, the worst outcome never happens. But some fears can be much long term, and look at the coronavirus pandemic that's going on for weeks, months. And that can often leave us with a sense that we may never come out of them. They can affect our lives, our ability to sleep and rest, they affect our appetite, and ultimately it starts to affect our health. We stop living our lives fully, and at worst, people end up afraid to leave the house. We're about infections or in other disorders, a whole host of things that they just feel uncomfortable about leaving the house to avoid that discomfort, to avoid that fear. They stay at home. And I think a reminder here is that we have an inbuilt response to fear, and we have it for a good reason, to keep us safe. But how do we cope? How do we know what is real, what is a perceived threat? And in each case, how do we manage to work through it and get some normality back? So a few little tips. I think firstly, and I think it's more difficult for men, I hate to say it, but acknowledge your fear. It's not about saying, I've got to live with it, I accept it, but just acknowledge it. If something makes you uncomfortable, nervous, own it. Try to put the fear into some kind of context. Is this problem imminent? Is it that dentist appointment 2 weeks away? 2 months away even? And if it's not imminent, I think just remind yourself of that. If you've gone 5.5 months between dentist appointments, it's never been on your mind, but suddenly that little text came up, or you found the appointment card, and it kicks in. Just put it back to the back of your mind again and think, I'll deal with it when it comes. Don't spend 14 days or whatever carrying that worry around with you when it'll make no difference to the outcome. No difference at all. And talking of outcomes, just remind yourself that the outcomes are possible scenarios. These are things that you've thought may happen. We don't always look at them, in terms of all the options. We tend to say, I said before, we tend to look at the negatives. And a lot of what we feel is simply that. It's what we feel, it's what we think might happen, it's not facts. Do some careful research. If you've got fears, and it probably comes back to coronavirus, etc. A lot of people just feel that they that uncertainty, that lack of information worries them. But I will say, again, careful research. I think it's about being mindful of where you get your information from, but look at alternative views, look at different opinions, look at different data sets. All too often we see something, we see a headline, and we believe it. Okay, don't believe everything you read, and I will say don't believe everything you think sometimes. Just challenge your own thoughts as well. I suppose the above, in terms of learning, really is about learn about yourself. If something gives you a certain fear, a physical reaction, then maybe just keep a record of when that happens. What happens? What triggered it? What were you doing at the time? And what happened to you? What did you think? What did you feel? Were there any physical sensations? Start to get an understanding of what the problem is. Try distracting your mind when you do get worried. Take some exercise, listen to music, just to immerse yourself and your body, your mind into some other activity. We often don't realise how easy it is sometimes just to distract ourselves to that wonderful phrase, isn't it? We lose ourselves in a book, we lose ourselves in a film or a piece of music. So just take yourself away from the worry of the time. You can come back to it later. I would say also watch your alcohol intake. When we have fears, it may make you feel a bit calmer. What's that expression? Dutch courage. But the after effects, as our metabolism slows down, will probably make you feel worse. Heighten your sensations, lower your mood, and therefore deepen the fear, probably leaving you feeling even more worried and depressed. And if you have a specific phobia, a certain fear, and I'll come back to spiders, I'm sorry, but I wouldn't suggest signing up for I'm a Celebrity to get me out of here. I think flooding yourself with your fear is not normally sort of the therapeutic approach to getting over something. But an option is to go and talk to a therapist, and what we would look at is something called gradual desensitization. So, so sticking with spiders, if there's a little spider in the bath, just ignore it, leave it, get comfortable with that spider being there for a while. And that's just the first step. But remember, we need fear to keep us safe. If we feared nothing, we just step out into the road, step out into the world, we probably won't last 5 minutes. So fear is there for a reason. It doesn't have to interfere with our happiness. It doesn't have to limit our life. But acknowledge it. I think importantly, talk about what worries you, talk about what scares you. Sometimes we need to talk about it. We need to experience it, just to what I would call disconfirm what it is that we think scares us. We often do the opposite. We avoid it. We try and never come across that spider, etc. So we never actually realise that it's not scary at all. So I think sometimes it's very important we talk about it, we expose ourselves to some of the fear gradually and just find out how scary it is. Sometimes we may never want to have a spider on our hand, but we could just get used to the fact that they're around and we can learn to live with them a little bit. So I hope you think this has been of some help and given you a few ideas just to think about your fear, how to cope with it, maybe to rationalise it and make it more manageable at least. If you need further help, you can pop over to my website and see what therapies are available. And also there are thousands of therapists out there who can help, do counselling, hypnotherapy, a whole host of therapies, remedies that will help you cope with life, your problems and your fears. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and put some stuff on Instagram as well. If you like this video, hopefully give it a like and maybe just subscribe for a little bit more positivity in your life. I'll continue to be posting videos for the next few weeks on this issue, on fear, coronavirus, and whatever is really trending on social media within the community around mental health and well-being. So until next week, this is Mark saying thank you and goodbye.